Look at this pathetic display. Is this your retirement plan?
He certainly knows his place, polishing that relic.
They were laughing when the countdown started. Nobody knew it yet. Nobody could have known. But in exactly 30 seconds, everything these men believed about power, about status, about who mattered and who didn't, all of it would become irrelevant. The fog hung low over the executive parking lot that morning, thick and gray, clinging to the asphalt like it was trying to hide what was about to happen. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the glass tower of Momentum Tech already glowed with fluorescent authority. Inside, lawyers were preparing contracts. Accountants were double-checking zeros. This wasn't just another Tuesday. This was the day the Singapore investors arrived. The day that would determine whether Momentum Tech became a billion-dollar empire or just another failed startup with expensive furniture. Everyone who mattered was outside. Waiting. Posturing. The CEO, Vincent Cordell, stood at the center of the cluster, 6'2" navy suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, silver hair styled like a man who'd been on magazine covers. Around him, vice presidents and department heads formed a half-circle of polished shoes and rehearsed confidence. They were all checking their phones, refreshing stock tickers, glancing toward the street for the black SUVs that would carry their future. That's when Vincent saw it. The car. A red Mustang, 1987, parked 3 rows back in a space that technically wasn't reserved but spiritually belonged to people who didn't clean toilets for a living. The paint was chipped along the passenger door. One hubcap was missing. The chrome had lost its shine years ago. It looked like it had been driven hard, loved poorly, and refused to die. Vincent pointed. Is that? He didn't finish the sentence. He just laughed. It wasn't a polite laugh. It was the kind of laugh that travels. The kind that makes other people turn their heads and join in before they even know what's funny. That car is junk, Vincent said louder now, projecting. Making sure everyone heard. Making sure the joke landed. And it did. Laughter rippled through the group. Someone whistled. Someone else raised their phone, half considering a photo. The VP of Engineering, Preston Hayes, shook his head like he'd just witnessed a health code violation. Who even drives that anymore? That's when they noticed him. He was standing beside the Mustang, one hand resting lightly on the driver's side mirror. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't cowering. He was just there. Wearing the same gray maintenance uniform he wore every night. The same scuffed work boots. The same neutral expression that gave nothing away. 53 years old. Average height. The kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. The kind of man the world had trained itself not to notice. He didn't say anything. That silence was the first crack in the morning's confidence. Because when someone insults you and you don't react, when you don't defend yourself, don't justify, don't even flinch, it creates a gap. A question. Why isn't he ashamed? Vincent felt it. That tiny flicker of doubt. So he did what powerful men do when they feel doubt. He pushed harder. Kai, right? Vincent raised his voice, performing now. You know this is executive parking, yeah? Investors are coming. We need this to look professional. A few people chuckled. Someone muttered, brutal. Kai's hand slipped off the mirror. He stood up straighter, not defensively, just taller than they remembered. His eyes met Vincent's for exactly 2 seconds. Not challenging. Not submissive. Just steady. He still didn't speak. The fog shifted. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. Vincent checked his watch, suddenly eager to move past this. The investors would arrive in 3 minutes. He needed to reset the energy. He needed to reclaim the moment. Just move it before they get here, all right? Vincent waved dismissively, already turning away. That's when the countdown ended. Nobody heard it. But it had been running the whole time. Kai reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. Kai had learned that invisibility was cheaper than anger. It wasn't something he'd been taught, it was something he'd calculated. Anger costs energy. Anger draws attention. Attention invites conflict. Conflict creates risk. And when you're raising a kid on a janitor's salary in a city that punishes mistakes, risk isn't romantic. It's just stupid. So Kai disappeared. Not literally. He still showed up. Clocked in at 11 p.m., 6 nights a week. Pushed his cart through the hallways of Momentum Tech's glass tower, past the innovation lab and the executive lounge and the boardroom where men in tailored suits decided the future without ever noticing the man emptying their trash. He'd learned the rhythm of invisibility. Move quietly, keep your head neutral, make eye contact only when absolutely necessary. Smile when spoken to. Nod when instructed. Exist in the margins of their world without ever asking to be centered in it. It was a kind of armor. The night shift suited him. The building was different after midnight, emptier, quieter, honest. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a low hum that filled the silence. The smell of industrial cleaner mixed with leftover catered lunches. Sometimes he'd find half-eaten sushi on a conference table, beside a whiteboard covered in equations someone thought were revolutionary. He'd wipe it all down. Erase the genius. Reset the room for tomorrow's performance. People left traces everywhere. Coffee rings on billion-dollar contracts. Sticky notes with passive-aggressive reminders. Lipstick-stained napkins beside laptops still glowing with unfinished emails. Kai saw it all. Not because he was nosy, because he was thorough. You don't last 15 years as a night janitor by cutting corners. The executive floor was the worst. Or the best, depending on how you looked at it. That's where the real mess lived. Arrogance has a smell, expensive cologne masking desperation. Ego leaves fingerprints on glass that never quite wipe clean. Vincent Cordell's office was on the northwest corner, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Kai cleaned it every Thursday. He knew Vincent's routine better than Vincent did. Coffee at 7 a.m., protein shake at 10, whiskey at 6. The trash can always had the same things: crumpled drafts of speeches, printed emails with angry red annotations, subscription renewal notices for magazines Vincent wanted to be seen reading. Kai never judged. Judging was expensive too. But he noticed that the people who talked loudest about innovation rarely stayed late enough to actually build anything. He noticed that the engineers who solved problems didn't have corner offices. He noticed that respect and authority weren't the same thing, even though everyone pretended they were. Security waved him through the lobby without looking up. "Night, Kai." Same guy, same words, same indifference. Kai nodded. He preferred it this way. The Mustang was waiting in the employee lot, far from the building, far from the reserved spaces. Kai had parked it there for 15 years. Same spot. Same car. Same quiet companion that never asked him to be anything other than what he was. People assumed the car was a mistake, a relic from better days kept out of stubborn nostalgia. They were half right. It was from better days. But Kai didn't keep it out of nostalgia. He kept it because it wasn't finished. His phone buzzed. A text from Theo, his son. "Science fair is Friday. You coming?" Kai stared at the screen for a long moment. Friday. 2 days away. He'd already requested the night off, submitted the form 3 weeks ago, followed up twice. His supervisor had shrugged. "We'll see." He typed back, "I'll be there." 3 words. A promise that weighed more than anything Vincent Cordell had ever signed. Kai slipped the phone into his pocket and looked at the Mustang. The paint was faded, the body was dented, but the engine was perfect. Nobody knew that. Nobody had ever asked. They saw the outside and made their conclusions. Junk. Relic. Embarrassment. Kai had stopped correcting people years ago. Let them think what they want. He unlocked the door and sat in the driver's seat, hands resting on the steering wheel. The interior smelled like oil and old leather and 15 years of early mornings. He didn't start the engine. Not yet. He just sat there in the pre-dawn silence, invisible to everyone who mattered. Except one person. Theo. And Theo didn't care about executive parking. Everything Kai had ever given up had Theo's fingerprints on it. The PhD program at MIT, abandoned 3 months before completion. The research position at Lockheed Martin, declined before the ink dried on the offer letter. The patent for a propulsion algorithm that could have made him a legend in aerospace engineering, folded into a drawer, unseen, gathering dust beside unpaid medical bills and a birth certificate that changed everything. Kai hadn't planned to be a father. He'd planned to be brilliant. Turns out, you don't get to choose which one costs more. Theo's mother, Celeste, had been a grad student too, astrophysics, sharp-minded, the kind of woman who argued with professors for fun. They'd met at a symposium on theoretical energy models. She'd challenged his math. He'd revised it. They'd fallen in love over equations neither of them could solve. Then Theo arrived, 2 months premature, and Celeste didn't. Complications. Hemorrhaging. A hospital room that smelled like panic and apologies. Kai remembered holding Theo for the first time, 3 pounds, impossibly small, wires and monitors keeping him alive, and realizing that every plan he'd ever made was now irrelevant. You can't negotiate with biology. You can't delay gravity. So Kai made a choice. Not a noble one. Not a heroic one. Just the only one that made sense. He chose the person who needed him most. He withdrew from MIT with 1 semester left. Sold the textbooks. Returned the borrowed equipment. Took the first job that offered health insurance and consistent hours. Night custodian at a mid-tier tech firm that was still 5 years away from becoming Momentum Tech. The math was simple. Theo needed stability more than Kai needed validation. And for 18 years, Kai had kept that equation balanced. He showed up. Every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every science fair. He learned to braid hair from YouTube tutorials. He memorized spelling words while mopping floors. He taught Theo how to sketch circuit diagrams on napkins at diners where breakfast cost less than the textbooks Kai used to buy without thinking. Genius didn't disappear. It just learned to fold itself smaller. Kai still thought in algorithms. Still saw the world in systems and optimizations. He just didn't talk about it. What was the point? The men in corner offices didn't care what the janitor used to be. They cared that the trash was empty and the floors were clean. So he gave them that. And he gave Theo everything else. The Mustang had been Celeste's car. A graduation gift from her parents, back when the future still felt infinite. After she died, Kai couldn't bring himself to sell it. Not out of sentimentality, he wasn't sentimental. But because Theo had been brought home from the hospital in that car. Because it still smelled faintly like her perfume even years later. Because some things aren't measured in resale value. Besides, the car had become useful in a different way. Late at night, after Theo fell asleep, Kai would go to the garage. He'd lift the hood. And he'd work. Not on the body. The body didn't matter. On the engine. He'd been rebuilding it for 15 years. Slowly. Carefully. Piece by piece, paycheck by paycheck. It wasn't restoration. It was reinvention. He gutted the original V8 and replaced it with something no one had seen before. An energy system that didn't just burn fuel. It optimized it, recycled it, extended it in ways that violated every assumption the automotive industry had made for a century. It was the same propulsion algorithm he'd abandoned at MIT. Except now it worked. He didn't tell anyone. Not because it was a secret, because no one asked. People saw a janitor with an old car and assumed the story ended there. Kai had learned not to correct them. Let them assume. Assumptions were cheaper than explanations. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Theo. Mr. Calloway said my project might win regionals. Can you help me practice the presentation? Kai smiled. Not the polite smile he gave security guards. A real one. He texted back, tonight. After work. Theo was 17 now. Senior year. Already accepted to 3 universities, full scholarships, all of them. The kind of opportunities Kai used to dream about. The kind Theo had earned without needing anyone's permission. Kai had never told Theo about MIT. Never mentioned the patents or the offers or the life he'd walked away from. Not out of shame, out of clarity. That version of Kai belonged to a world that no longer existed. The man who mattered now was the one who showed up. The one who kept promises. The one who would be at that science fair on Friday, no matter what Vincent Cordell or anyone else thought about his car. Kai checked the time. 6:47 a.m. He needed to get home, sleep for a few hours, then help Theo rehearse. The presentation was on renewable energy systems. Ironic, considering what was sitting 3 feet in front of him under a chipped red hood. He ran his hand along the Mustang's dashboard, feeling the old leather crack beneath his palm. Some things take time. Some things are worth the wait. Mockery is easiest when you think you're safe. Vincent Cordell had built an empire on safety. Calculated risks. Hedge your bets. Never expose yourself to anything that could shatter the illusion of control. And this morning, with $2 billion walking toward him in tailored suits, he needed everything to be perfect. But the Mustang was still there. And worse, Kai was still standing beside it. The black SUVs pulled into the lot with the kind of silence that expensive vehicles make. Engineered quiet, designed to communicate wealth without vulgarity. Doors opened. The investor stepped out. Dr. Lena Chow led the group, her red dress cutting through the morning fog like a declaration. She wasn't here to be impressed. She was here to decide whether momentum tech deserved to exist. Vincent straightened his tie. Smiled his magazine cover smile. Extended his hand. Dr. Chow. Welcome to. Is that a 1987 Mustang? Her question cut through his rehearsed greeting like a scalpel through silk. Vincent's smile faltered. Just for a second. But a second was enough. Ah yes. That's. He glanced back at the car at Kai, searching for words that wouldn't sound like excuses. That's just maintenance. We're having it moved. Maintenance drives a classic Mustang? One of her associates, a man named Dmitry Volkov, sharp-eyed ex-Tesla engineer, stepped closer, squinting at the car like it had personally offended him. Interesting choice. Preston Hayes, the VP of engineering, tried to redirect. Gentlemen, Dr. Chow, if we could move inside, we have a presentation that... In a moment. Dr. Chow's tone wasn't rude. Just final. She walked toward the Mustang, heels clicking on asphalt, each step a small judgment. The executives exchanged glances. This wasn't the script. Vincent felt panic rising in his chest. Not the kind you show, the kind you swallow and pretend isn't there. He followed Dr. Chow, trying to reclaim control through proximity. Dr. Chow, I assure you, this vehicle has nothing to do with. Why is it parked here? She stopped 3 feet from Kai, studying him with the same intensity she probably used to evaluate billion-dollar algorithms. Kai met her gaze. Didn't flinch. Didn't perform. Because I work here, he said simply. At night. Yes. And you drive this every day? For 15 years. Something flickered across Dr. Chow's face. Not pity, not condescension. Curiosity. Vincent stepped between them, voice loud enough to reclaim the conversation. I asked you to move the car. We have guests. The word landed like an insult. Not to Kai. To Dr. Chow. She turned to Vincent slowly. Mr. Cordell, does this man's vehicle offend you? The question was a trap. Vincent knew it immediately. Answer yes and he's classist. Answer no and he looks weak. He chose ego. It's not about offense, Dr. Chow. It's about standards. We're building a company that represents the future. And that car, he gestured dismissively. That car represents the past. Preston laughed. Too loud. Too eager to agree. It's junk, Preston added, performing for the investors now. I mean, look at it. Paint's chipped. Missing a hubcap. Probably breaks down twice a week. More laughter from the cluster of executives. Nervous energy released as cruelty. Kai's jaw tightened. Just slightly. Dr. Chow noticed. Mr. Cordell, she said quietly, do you know what I find interesting about people who mock things they don't understand? Vincent's smile froze. They're usually standing too close to something important. She turned back to Kai. How often does it break down? Never. Never? Dimitri stepped forward now, engineer instincts activated. A 1987 Mustang? Running daily for 15 years? That's statistically improbable. It's maintained, Kai said. By whom? Me. Dimitri's eyes narrowed. You're a mechanic? I'm a janitor. The distinction hung in the air like smoke. Preston snorted. See? He cleans our offices and thinks he can. Thinks he can what? Dr. Chow's voice was ice. Maintain a vehicle? Take pride in his work? Or exist in a parking lot without your permission? The lot went silent. Vincent felt the ground shifting. This wasn't about the car anymore. This was about judgment. About whose opinion mattered. About whether Momentum Tech was the kind of company that respected people or just used them. Dr. Chow looked at Kai one more time. What's under the hood? Kai's hand moved to his keys. And Vincent realized, too late, that he should have asked that question first. No one bothered to ask what was under the hood. That was the part that didn't surprise Kai anymore. People see what they expect to see. A janitor drives an old car. Of course it's junk. Of course it barely runs. Of course it's held together with duct tape and stubbornness. Why would you look closer? Why would you question the story when the story already makes sense? Kai had stopped correcting them 15 years ago. He'd learned that explanations were expensive. That showing people who you used to be only made them uncomfortable. That the world preferred simple narratives, janitor, CEO, success, failure, because complexity required effort. So he let them believe what they wanted. Let them assume the Mustang was nostalgia. A relic from better days. A mistake he couldn't afford to fix. He never told them about the nights. The nights after Theo fell asleep. After the dishes were done and the bills were sorted and the uniform was hung up for tomorrow. When Kai would walk to the garage, flip on the fluorescent light and lift the hood. Not to restore it. To rebuild it. 4,000 hours. Maybe more. He'd stopped counting after the first year. Piece by piece, paycheck by paycheck, he gutted the original engine and replaced it with something that shouldn't exist. An energy system that didn't just burn fuel, it negotiated with it. Controlled microcombustions. Recycled thermal waste. Optimized every rotation, every piston stroke, every molecule of gasoline in ways that violated every assumption Detroit had made for a century. It was the same algorithm he'd abandoned at MIT. The one his professors called theoretically brilliant but practically impossible. Except Kai had made it possible. He'd done it in a garage that smelled like oil and old concrete. With tools he'd bought used. With parts he'd salvaged from junkyards and online auctions. No team. No funding. No lab equipment. Just math. And time. And the kind of obsession that only makes sense when you've already lost everything else. The engine didn't roar when it started. That was the first thing people always got wrong about performance. They thought power had to announce itself, had to shake the ground and rattle windows. Kai's engine whispered. Because efficiency doesn't beg for attention. On paper, the Mustang should have gotten 25 miles per gallon. Maybe 30 if you drove it gently. Kai's engine got 340. He tested it. Documented it. Driven from California to Texas on a single tank just to prove the math wasn't lying. The data was locked in a drawer at home. Notebooks, schematics, telemetry logs from 50,000 miles of real-world testing. He had proof. He just never showed anyone. Because the moment he revealed it, the moment he stepped forward and said, "I built this," his life would stop being his own. There would be investors, patents, meetings, lawyers, publicity. All the things that had pulled him away from MIT. All the things that would pull him away from Theo. And Kai had already chosen. He chose Theo. Every single day for 18 years he chose Theo. The engine wasn't about recognition. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving the professors wrong. It was about not forgetting. Not forgetting who he used to be. Not forgetting that genius doesn't disappear just because the world stops paying attention. Not forgetting that some problems are worth solving even if no one ever knows you solved them. Kai's hand rested on the Mustang's hood now, feeling the warmth of the sun cutting through the morning fog. Underneath the chipped red paint, underneath the dents and rust and missing hubcap, was something no automotive engineer in the world had successfully built. And they were standing 3 feet away from it, calling it junk. Dr. Chow's question echoed in his mind, "What's under the hood?" Kai looked at Vincent, at Preston, at the cluster of executives who'd spent 15 years walking past him without seeing him. He could walk away right now. Let them keep believing. Keep his secret. Keep his life small and safe and invisible. Or he could show them. Not because they deserved it. Because he did. Kai pulled the keys from his pocket. The metal was warm against his palm, worn smooth from 15 years of the same grip, the same motion, the same quiet routine. He looked at Dr. Chow. "You really want to see?" She nodded. "What?" No hesitation. Kai moved to the driver's side door. Opened it. The hinges creaked. One of the few things he hadn't fixed because some things were supposed to sound old. He sat down. Hands on the steering wheel. The leather cracked beneath his fingers. Behind him, he could hear Preston muttering something. Dimitri stepping closer. Vincent trying to redirect the conversation back to the pitch. But Dr. Chow's attention was locked. And attention, Kai had learned, was the only currency that mattered. He slid the key into the ignition. Paused. This was the moment. The line between invisible and seen. Between janitor and engineer. Between the man they thought he was and the man he'd never stopped being. Kai turned the key. And the world got quieter. Someone stopped laughing. It wasn't Vincent. It wasn't Preston. It wasn't any of the executives who'd spent the morning performing confidence like a rehearsed script. It was Dmitry Volkov, the ex-Tesla engineer. The man who'd spent a decade designing propulsion systems for vehicles that didn't exist yet. The man who could hear the difference between marketing and physics. His head tilted. His eyes narrowed. His hand came up slowly, not to point but to pause. Like a conductor stopping an orchestra mid-note. Wait. That single word cut through the parking lot like a blade. The Mustang's engine hummed. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just present. It sounded so clean it felt wrong. Like listening to a recording instead of a machine. No rough idle. No mechanical compromise. No friction. Just precision. Dmitri took 3 steps forward, his expensive shoes clicking on asphalt. He wasn't smiling. Wasn't skeptical. His expression had shifted into something else entirely, the look of a man who'd just seen something that shouldn't exist. "That's not a V8, he said quietly. Preston laughed nervously. "Of course it's a V8. It's a Mustang." They all. "No." Dimitri's interruption was sharp. Final. He moved closer to the driver's side, crouching slightly, tilting his head to listen. "The acoustic signature is wrong. The combustion rhythm?" He stopped. His face had gone pale. "This isn't internal combustion. Not traditional combustion." Dr. Chow stepped forward. "Explain." "The efficiency." Dimitri's voice was shaking now. "You can hear it? No wasted energy. No heat loss. Every cycle is optimized. That sound?" He pointed at the Mustang like it was evidence in a trial. "That's what perfect looks like." Vincent tried to reclaim control. "Dimitri, it's just an old car. You're reading too much into." "I'm reading exactly enough." Dmitri turned to face him, and for the first time all morning, An investor looked at the CEO with something close to pity. Mr. Cordell, do you have any idea what you're standing next to? Silence. Preston's smirk had died completely. One of the junior executives, a woman named Talia, took a step back, like proximity to the Mustang might implicate her in whatever was unraveling. Dr. Chow moved past Vincent without asking permission. She approached the passenger side window, peering in at the dashboard. Her eyes scanned the interior: old leather, cracked vinyl, a steering wheel worn smooth by years of use. And then she saw the telemetry. A small digital display, embedded where the radio should have been. Blue light. Clean interface. Real-time data streaming across the screen in numbers that didn't make sense. 340.7 miles per gallon. Thermal efficiency, 94%. Energy recapture, 97%. She straightened up slowly. Turned to Kai, who was still sitting in the driver's seat, hands resting on the wheel, expression neutral. Mr. Brennan, Kai said quietly. Kai Brennan. Mr. Brennan. Dr. Chow's voice had changed. No longer evaluating. Negotiating. How long have you been working on this? 15 years. The number landed like a sentencing. Dimitri pulled out his phone, fingers moving frantically. Chow, I need to make a call. If this is what I think it is, if the efficiency holds under lab conditions. He stopped scrolling. Looked up. His eyes were wide. I know this architecture. I've seen this before. Where? Dr. Chow's question was surgical. MIT. 2009. A graduate thesis on adaptive propulsion systems. The author proposed an algorithm that could recycle thermal energy in real time. Peer reviewers called it impossible. Said the tolerances were too tight. Said no one could build it outside a clean room. He looked at Kai. The paper was never published. The author withdrew. Dr. Chow's gaze locked onto Kai. You wrote that paper. It wasn't a question. Kai didn't answer. He just sat there, feeling the vibration of his own creation humming through the steering wheel, a sensation he'd felt 1,000 times alone in a garage where no one was watching. Why didn't you finish? Dimitri's voice was almost desperate. Why didn't you publish? Kai's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't need to look to know what it said. Theo. Asking about Friday. Asking if his father would be there. Because I had something more important to build, Kai said simply. Vincent felt the authority draining from his body like blood from a wound. Because he'd just spent the morning mocking a man who'd solved a problem the entire automotive industry had given up on. Preston tried to speak. But he's not just anything. Dr. Chow's interruption was ice. She turned to Vincent. Mr. Cordell, you told us you were building the future. But the future has been parked in your lot for 15 years. And you called it junk. The executives stood frozen. Watching their CEO realize he'd been standing next to $2 billion and never bothered to look down. Dimitri circled the Mustang again, examining every detail he'd dismissed 10 minutes ago. The valuation, if this technology scales, if it's reproducible, he looked at Dr. Chow. We're not talking about funding momentum tech anymore. No, Dr. Chow agreed. We're not. She looked at Kai. And for the first time in 15 years someone saw him. Not as a janitor. As the man who just made everyone in that parking lot obsolete. The engine didn't roar. It answered. That was the only way to describe what happened when Kai pressed the accelerator. Not a rev. Not a growl. Not the theatrical explosion of sound that muscle cars use to announce dominance. Just a response. Immediate. Precise. Like the car had been waiting 15 years for someone to finally ask it a question. The Mustang moved forward 3 feet. Stopped. The telemetry display pulsed with blue light, numbers updating in real time. Fuel consumption, 0.002 gallons. Distance, 10 feet equivalent efficiency. Dimitri's knees buckled slightly. He caught himself on the hood of a nearby Tesla. That's impossible, he whispered. That's thermodynamically impossible. But it was idling in front of him. Dr. Chow moved closer, her red dress a sharp contrast against the gray fog. She wasn't looking at the car anymore. She was looking at Kai. Studying him the way archaeologists study artifacts. Trying to understand context. Trying to piece together how something this valuable had been buried for so long. Mr. Brennan, she said carefully, do you have documentation? Kai turned off the engine. The silence that followed felt heavier than the sound had been. Yes. How much? All of it. Schematics. Test data. 50,000 miles of telemetry. Failure logs. Material specifications. Thermal imaging. Everything. Dimitri made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. 50,000 miles. You've been testing this for... He couldn't finish the sentence. Preston Hayes stood frozen, his face the color of concrete. But you're a janitor. The sentence hung in the air like an accusation that had just realized it was evidence. Kai stepped out of the Mustang. He wasn't taller than Vincent. Wasn't louder than Preston. Wasn't wearing a suit that cost $4,000. But when he spoke, every executive in that parking lot leaned forward. I clean your offices, Kai said quietly. I empty your trash. I see the whiteboards you leave covered in equations you think are revolutionary. He paused. Let the silence stretch. Most of them are wrong. Vincent's face flushed red. You can't just. I'm not insulting you. Kai's tone was calm. Clinical. I'm giving you context. You've been walking past me for 15 years. You've seen me every week. And not once, did any of you ask what I did before I started mopping your floors. Talia, the junior executive, looked like she wanted to disappear into the asphalt. Dr. Chow pulled out her phone. Started typing rapidly. Dimitri, contact the firm. Tell them we need a full engineering team here by end of day. Independent verification. I want thermal scans, emissions testing, and a complete teardown analysis. On the Mustang? Dimitri asked. On the technology. Dr. Chow's eyes never left Kai. Mr. Brennan, I'm prepared to make an offer right now. Today. For the intellectual property. For the patent rights. For exclusive licensing. She paused. Name your price. The parking lot went silent. Vincent felt his chest tighten. Because he understood what was happening. The pitch meeting was over. Momentum Tech didn't matter anymore. The $2 billion had just walked past him and stopped in front of a man wearing a maintenance uniform. Kai looked at his phone. 8:34 a.m. Theo's text was still there. Science fair is Friday. You coming? I'm not interested, Kai said. Dr. Chow blinked. I'm sorry? I said I'm not interested. Dimitri stepped forward, voice urgent. Mr. Brennan, you don't understand. This technology, if it's legitimate, could be worth 50 billion. Maybe more. You could. I know what it's worth. Kai's voice was steady. Final. I've known for 15 years. Then why? Dr. Chow stopped herself. Recalculated. What do you want? Kai looked at Vincent. At Preston. At the cluster of executives who'd laughed at his car, at his uniform, at his existence. I want you to understand something, Kai said quietly. You spent this morning deciding whether Momentum Tech was worth investing in. You looked at spreadsheets, market projections, growth models. You evaluated everything you could measure. He gestured to the Mustang. But you never asked about the car. You saw it. You mocked it. You ordered me to move it. And not once did it occur to you that maybe, just maybe, the most valuable thing in this parking lot wasn't inside your building. The sentence landed like a verdict. Preston opened his mouth. Closed it. No words came. Vincent felt something cold settle in his stomach. Because Kai wasn't angry. That was the worst part. He wasn't defending himself. Wasn't demanding apologies. He was just correct. Dr. Chow studied Kai for a long moment. Then nodded slowly. You're right. We didn't ask. And that was our mistake. She paused. But I'm asking now. What do you want? Kai checked his phone one more time. Then pocketed his keys. I want to be on time. He walked past the investors. Past the executives. Past Vincent, who stood frozen, watching $2 billion walk away in a gray maintenance uniform. Dr. Chow called after him. Mr. Brennan, wait. But Kai didn't stop. Because he'd already said everything that mattered. And silence, in the end, was always louder than applause. The valuation meant nothing to the man holding the keys. $50 billion. Dr. Chow had said it out loud. Dimitri had confirmed it. The number hung in the parking lot like smoke, visible, undeniable, suffocating in its enormity. $50 billion. Enough to buy islands. Build empires. Rewrite entire industries. Enough to never worry about money again. Enough to make Forbes covers and TED Talks and legacy. Kai heard the number. And kept walking. Mr. Brennan? Dr. Chow's heels clicked rapidly behind him. She wasn't chasing, investors don't chase, but she was following with the kind of urgency that meant she understood what was slipping away. Please. 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes to explain what this could mean. Kai stopped. Not because the offer was tempting. Because politeness was cheaper than conflict. He turned. Dr. Chow caught up, slightly breathless, her composure cracked just enough to show the human underneath. You've built something that will change the world. You know that, don't you? I know. Then why? She stopped. Recalculated her approach. What would it take? Not for the technology. For a conversation. Just to discuss possibilities. Kai looked past her. At Vincent, still frozen near the Mustang. At Preston, pale and silent. At the junior executives clustered together like survivors of something they didn't understand. I've had 15 years to think about this, Kai said quietly. 15 years to imagine what would happen if I ever showed anyone. The meetings. The contracts. The lawyers. The patents. The publicity. He paused. The time it would cost. Time? Dr. Chow's confusion was genuine. I have a son. Kai's voice didn't waver. He's 17. Senior year. Science fair is Friday. He's been working on his project for 6 months. Renewable energy systems. He wants to be an engineer. Dr. Chow nodded slowly. That's wonderful. But surely you could. I missed 3 years of his life once already. The sentence came out flat. Clinical. Like data from a test he'd rather forget. MIT. I was so obsessed with being brilliant that I almost missed the fact that he existed. When his mother died, I had a choice. Finish the PhD or raise my son. He looked at the Mustang. I chose him. Every day for 18 years I chose him. And you're asking me to make that choice again. The weight of that truth settled over the parking lot like fog. Dr. Chow was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. What if we structured it differently? Remote consulting. Flexible schedule. You control the timeline. Then it's not my time anymore. Kai checked his phone. 8:41 a.m. The moment I say yes, someone else owns my calendar. Someone else decides what's urgent. What's important. What can wait. He looked up. Met her eyes. And my son can't wait. He's 17 now. In 8 months he's gone. College. His own life. And I'll have missed it. Mr. Brennan? I know what you're going to say. Kai's tone wasn't unkind. Just final. That I could give him a better life. Better opportunities. Financial security. And you're right. $50 billion could buy a lot of things. He put his phone back in his pocket. But it can't buy Friday. The sentence hung in the air like a line that couldn't be crossed. Dimitri had joined them now, his engineer's brain still trying to solve the equation. What if we waited? Until after the science fair. Until after he graduates. Just don't let this disappear. It won't disappear. Kai's voice was calm. Certain. It's been in my garage for 15 years. It'll be there next month. Next year. When I'm ready. He paused. If I'm ever ready? Vincent finally found his voice. You're walking away from $50 billion because of a science fair? The question was meant to sound incredulous. It came out sounding small. Kai looked at Vincent for a long moment. And in that look was every night shift, every mop bucket, every time Vincent had walked past him without seeing him. No, Kai said quietly. I'm walking away from $50 billion because I already know what matters. He turned. Started walking toward the building. Dr. Chow called after him one last time. At least take my card. Please. In case you change your mind. Kai stopped. Turned halfway. Extended his hand. Dr. Chow placed her card in his palm. Their eyes met. I won't change my mind, Kai said. But I'll keep it. Out of respect. He slipped the card into his pocket. Right next to Theo's text. And walked away from the largest offer anyone in that parking lot would ever see. Vincent watched him go, his chest tight, his throat dry. Because he'd just learned something he wished he could unlearn. Money always arrives. But time, real time, the kind that matters, only comes once. And Kai Brennan had already spent his. On something worth more than $50 billion. Kai was late. Not by much. 7 minutes. But 7 minutes was 7 minutes, and Theo had been standing outside Franklin High's auditorium for 8. Kai saw him from across the parking lot. Tall now, taller than Kai remembered from last month, wearing the button-down shirt they'd picked out together at Target. 17 years old. On the edge of everything. College acceptance letters already pinned to the refrigerator. Scholarships already secured. A future already built. Without needing his father's genius to prop it up. Theo spotted him. Wave. Not the excited wave of a child. The controlled wave of a young man who'd learned not to need too much. Kai's chest tightened. He'd left the Mustang at home. Took the bus. 45 minutes instead of 15. Because today wasn't about the car. Today wasn't about algorithms or efficiency or $50 billion. Today was about showing up. Dad. Theo's smile was genuine. Relieved. You made it. I made it. Kai's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he adjusted his collar. He changed out of the maintenance uniform. Wore the one dress shirt he owned. The tie Celeste had bought him for graduation 20 years ago, still perfectly knotted. You okay? Theo's eyes narrowed with the kind of perception kids develop when they grow up watching their parents struggle. I'm perfect. Kai wasn't lying. You ready? Nervous. Theo laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that meant he actually was. Mr. Calloway said there's a judge from Caltech here. And someone from the Department of Energy. He paused. What if I mess up? Kai put his hand on Theo's shoulder. Felt the tension there. The weight of expectations. The fear of not being enough. He knew that weight intimately. You won't mess up, Kai said quietly. But even if you do, even if every word comes out wrong and the model doesn't work and the judges hate it, I'll still be proud of you. Theo's eyes went wet. Just for a second. He blinked it away fast. Thanks, Dad. They walked into the auditorium together. Rows of projects lined the walls, solar panels, wind turbines, biodiesel processors. Kids in dress clothes standing nervously beside poster boards covered in data. Parents with cameras. Teachers with clipboards. Judges moving slowly through the exhibits, asking questions, taking notes. Theo's project was in the back corner. Table 17. A scale model of a thermal energy recapture system, crude compared to what Kai had built, but brilliant for a 17-year-old working alone in a bedroom. Kai stared at it. At the hand-drawn schematics. At the calculations done in pencil, erased and redone a dozen times. At the prototype built from hardware store parts and YouTube tutorials. And he realized something that made his throat close. Theo had inherited it anyway. Not the MIT education. Not the research grants. Not the lab equipment or the peer-reviewed publications. The curiosity. The need to understand how things worked. The refusal to accept impossible as an answer. The quiet obsession with making something better, even if no one was watching. Kai had given Theo that. Not through lectures. Not through pushing. Just by being the kind of father who came home tired and still answered questions. Who sketched circuits on napkins at diners. Who never stopped seeing the world as a series of problems worth solving. Mr. Brennan? A voice behind him. Kai turned. A woman in a Caltech polo, clipboard in hand, judge's badge around her neck. I'm Dr. Raina Osei. I've been reviewing your son's work. Kai's heart stopped. And? Dr. Osei smiled. It's extraordinary. The efficiency model he's proposing, the thermal recapture algorithm, it's remarkably similar to a paper I read years ago. MIT, I think. Never published. She looked at Theo. Where did you get the idea? Theo glanced at his father. Then back at Dr. Osei. My dad, Theo said simply. He helped me with the math. Dr. Osei's eyes shifted to Kai. Studied him for a moment. You're an engineer? Kai hesitated. Not because he was ashamed. Because the answer was complicated. I was, he said quietly. A long time ago. Well, your son has a gift. Dr. Osei made a note on her clipboard. I'll be recommending him for regionals. Possibly nationals. Theo's face lit up. Not with arrogance. With relief. The kind of relief that comes from knowing your work mattered. That someone saw what you built and understood it. Kai knew that feeling. He just felt it this morning. But this, watching Theo receive recognition, watching him stand taller, watching him realize he was enough. This was better than any valuation. This was worth 15 years. Dr. Osei moved on to the next project. Theo turned to Kai, eyes wide. Dad, did you hear that? Nationals. I might go to. I heard. Kai's voice cracked. Just slightly. He pulled Theo into a hug. The kind of hug that says everything words can't. Theo hugged back. Tight. Like he was 17 and 7 at the same time. When they separated, Kai's eyes were wet. I'm proud of you, Kai said. I know. Theo smiled. You always are. And Kai realized he'd made the right choice. Not just today. Every day for 18 years. Years later, the plaque still didn't mention the laughter. The Smithsonian exhibit opened on a Tuesday. March 14th, Pi Day. Someone on the museum's board thought that was clever. A mathematical constant for a technology that had redefined constants. The Mustang sat under soft lighting, roped off behind velvet barriers. Polished now. Restored. The chipped paint fixed, the missing hubcap replaced. It looked the way museums make everything look. Sanitized, perfect, stripped of the context that made it real. But the engine was still Kai's. The plaque beside it read. The Brennan engine, 2009 to 2024 revolutionary thermal propulsion system. Efficiency, 340 miles per gallon. Changed automotive industry forever. On loan from private collection. It didn't mention the garage. Didn't mention the 15 years. Didn't mention the morning Vincent Cordell called it junk in front of investors who were about to change history. Kai stood in the back of the gallery, hands in his pockets, watching families take photos. Kids pressing their faces against the glass. Engineering students sketching the sensor arrays in notebooks. He'd come alone. Declined the VIP invitation. Skipped the press conference. Let the museum director give speeches about innovation and perseverance without him. Because this wasn't about him anymore. Dad. Kai turned. Theo stood behind him, 24 now, graduated from Caltech, job offer from NASA already accepted. Taller than Kai. Confident in ways Kai had never been at that age. I didn't know you were coming, Kai said. I wasn't going to. Theo moved beside him, both of them staring at the Mustang. But then I saw the exhibit announcement. And I realized I'd never actually asked you about it. About what? Why you waited so long? Theo's voice was quiet. Careful. You built this when I was a baby. You could have changed the world 15 years ago. Could have been famous. Rich. Why didn't you? Kai was silent for a long moment. On the other side of the gallery, a little girl tugged her father's sleeve, pointing at the Mustang. Daddy, how does it go so far? The father read the plaque. Smiled. Someone very smart figured out how to not waste energy. Kai watched them. Felt something settle in his chest. I did change the world, Kai said finally. Just not the way people expected. Theo looked at him. What do you mean? The engine's in textbooks now. In universities. Companies license the technology. Cars run cleaner. Emissions dropped 30% in 5 years. The world is different because of what I built. Kai paused. But you're different because I showed up. Theo's throat worked. Dad. You won regionals, Kai continued softly. Then nationals. You got into Caltech on your own merit. You're about to work on propulsion systems for spacecraft. You became everything I walked away from becoming. He turned to face Theo fully. And you did it because I was there. Not in a lab. Not in board meetings. There. A tear slipped down Theo's cheek. He didn't wipe it away. I never thanked you, Theo whispered. You didn't have to. Kai's voice was steady. You lived your life. That was enough. They stood together in silence, watching strangers marvel at a car that had sat in a parking lot being mocked while carrying a secret that would change everything. Mr. Brennan? A voice interrupted. Both of them turned. Dr. Chow stood 3 feet away. Older now. Gray streaking her black hair. But the same sharp eyes. The same presence. Dr. Chow. Kai's tone was polite. Neutral. I saw your name on the loan agreement. I had to come. She glanced at the Mustang. It's strange seeing it like this. Clean. Perfect. I remember it covered in dust. Parked where it wasn't supposed to be. It was exactly where it was supposed to be, Kai said quietly. Dr. Chow smiled. Said. Knowing. You were right, you know. That morning. You told us we were standing next to something important and didn't know it. She paused. I've never forgotten that. Neither have I. Momentum Tech folded 2 years later, Dr. Chow said. Vincent tried to pivot. Couldn't. The company that mocked your car doesn't exist anymore. She looked at Kai. But your engine does. In every hybrid. Every electric system. Every vehicle trying to do more with less. Kai nodded. I know. Do you ever regret waiting? Kai looked at Theo. At his son standing beside him, whole and brilliant and present. Not for a second. Dr. Chow followed his gaze. Understood. She extended her hand. It was an honor. Even if you never took the deal. Kai shook it. It was never about the deal. She nodded. Walked away. Theo watched her go. Then looked at the Mustang. Then at his father. The plaque doesn't tell the real story, Theo said. No, Kai agreed. But the real story was never for them. Theo smiled. Bumped his shoulder against Kai's. They stood together in the gallery watching people marvel at genius. But the real genius, the kind that mattered, wasn't under glass. It was standing right there. In a son who knew he was loved. In a father who'd chosen presence over prestige. In a legacy that outlived humiliation. Because in the end, history remembers the innovation. But love remembers the sacrifice. And only one of those lives forever.